Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
And welcome back to another episode of Influencers Radio. You know, if you are a small business owner and you've been working hard for years building your business, getting your systems, your processes, your data together, then you definitely need to pay close attention to today's show, because your business might just be a perfect target for hackers. Now, I'm not big into fear mongering, but I think it's just the reality of, you know, the time that we live in, and everything going to the cloud and so much stuff being done virtually. You know, the opportunities for hackers has just seemed like it's increased exponentially over the last couple of years. So I want you to think about a couple of questions. Do you know how easy it is for hackers to break into your system? Do you know how much money it will cost you if hackers break into your system and you go down? And is it something that you even think about? You know, most entrepreneurs are too busy trying to grow their business, and spend little to no time thinking about how to protect what they've built. Well, today my guest is Jesse Castro, known as America's favorite cybersecurity expert and the founder of Freedom Managed Services, a cybersecurity firm that partners with owners, executives, and directors of small to medium-sized businesses to secure and protect their digital and physical assets from the hordes of cyber threats lurking in the world today. And he also has a new book coming out called Cybersecurity Secrets. With that, Jesse, welcome to Influencers Radio.
Hi, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today because, you know, it just seems like every time you turn on your computer, every time you look at the news, anything around the cyber world, it's something around security or somebody being hacked or data being compromised. And I think one of the things that's overlooked so much, and probably one of the biggest misconceptions, is people think it's always these giant companies that get these attacks. But I think one of the big misconceptions is that a lot of small to medium-sized businesses think that, you know, they're too small to attract the attention of hackers. And that's what I want to do today, is kind of talk about a lot of those myths and misconceptions around cybersecurity with a small to medium-sized business. So let's kick it off with that. What are you seeing that is some of the biggest misconceptions or myths around that are causing people to maybe, you know, neglect looking after this problem?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The number one misconception is that it's not going to happen to me. You know, we're too small. You know, we don't have anything that anybody would want. Those are all misconceptions. If you have anything out there on the web, if you have a company, if you have an email address, that's all valuable to hackers.
And I think a lot of people don't maybe understand that. Can you dig a little bit into why something as simple as an email address? Most people are thinking they need to protect maybe my social security number, things like that. But why is something as simple and as available as an email address possibly open you up to problems?
Yeah, like you said earlier, I don't like the fear mongering. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that everything that I'm going to talk about, these are things that happen, and they happen all the time. So back to the question about the email address. Let's say that I'm a CEO of a company, and I've been there for 5 or 10 years. Well, that address, that email address, is pretty much known by everybody that company does business with. And so let's say that I leave. Let's say that I am no longer with that company. But in the meantime, while I was at the company, I opened up several different types of Google Doc boxes, or I opened up a Dropbox, and nobody else in the company knew I had those. And so though I had been putting all kinds of data and all kinds of things in those so that I can work on them when I'm at home. And I leave the company, I forget to tell them about those boxes, they're out there. And Dropbox has been hit so many different times. People will get into those things and all of your data is there. And this is the CFO or the CEO. Those are some big time documents that are just out in the cloud, just sitting there waiting to be hacked. And if somebody does get inside of your business and they do find a password of somebody that's at that level, it won't take anything to get into those boxes and take everything, all the secrets that they have. It's very, very scary when you think about it from that perspective. So an email address is very, very crucial. And it's one of the things that, anytime you do any kind of marketing, what's the first thing you ask for?
Yeah. Yeah, that email address. Well, I'll tell you, your book is coming out potentially this month, April, and I appreciate getting an advanced copy of it because, you bring up some really interesting points. And, one thing that I've kind of got from your book is even if you are conscious of these threats and the security, you really are only as secure as the weakest connection. So like you talked about, that employee that maybe has opened up drop boxes and put things in can, compromise the whole company just because of their lack of security. And it's not even something that they've done intentionally. They just may not even know about that. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know chapter 5 of your books in Cybersecurity Secrets is around talking about how cybercriminals attack your network. And you talked a little bit there with the email addresses, but what are some of those ways that they attack your network that we may not be aware of?
Yeah, they're using a lot of phishing attempts, and there's different types of phishing. And what they do is they use a lot of social engineering, and it's really interesting how they do it. They used to go after just the CFO or the CEO or the president of the company and try to trick them. But when you think about that over the course of time since this whole thing has started, they've learned something from that. That's one person in a company, two people in a company. And they can't do a lot with that because once that person is on to the scam, they no longer are going to fall for it. But what these hackers have done is they've learned that their weakest line of defense is an untrained employee populace. And so they use psychology on these people because most people get an email from the CEO and they jump. They want to please them right away. I don't know why that is. I wish they wouldn't do that. But you get an email from the CEO that says, hey, go out and get me these cards. We have new customers. I want to get them. Don't let anybody else know. Put it on your credit card. The first thing they do is they go do that. And the next thing you know, they've been duped. And so your weakest link, which is your employee base, should be your first line and best line of defense. And there's so many different elements to cybersecurity, but for us at Freedom Managed Services, the one thing that we focus on first is making sure that the employee base understands the basics of cybersecurity and how to look for those things, like the acronym SLAM. You look for signatures and make sure that the signature matches. So when somebody sends you an email, if it says, hey, this is from Jesse, but the email says from Tim over at, Tim at Google, well, that's wrong. There's something wrong there. That's probably a scam. The L stands for links. Any kind of link in there, don't open the link. If you didn't expect that email, mouse over it. Find out where that link is going. The next one is attachments. Never, ever, ever open an attachment that you weren't expecting. That most definitely is going to cause you problems. And then the M stands for message. Make sure that you're looking at the message. Understand that the person who is sending this or supposedly sending this to you, make sure it's in the kind of verbiage that they would typically use. Look for misspellings, look for things that they wouldn't do. And then you would know right away, hey, this is spam. We need to get rid of this. So it's very, very important that you train the employees first so that they have an understanding of how to fight and defend against these kind of things. That's how ransomware hits. The last ransomware that we looked at was $127,000 to get the data back.
My goodness. and it can just go in a flash. I will tell you, before 2020, companies had the luxury or advantage, at least, of kind of controlling the perimeters of their network and their workspace when, their employees were working from desk or cubicles or, offices, within their facilities. They had a lot of control, but clearly since the COVID pandemic, that's all been turned upside down. And I know that you have a chapter in the book about staying secure while working from home, and I know you touched on that a little bit. But what are some of the things from an employer's, from a business owner's perspective that maybe they should be educating or have someone educating their employees on when they are working from home?
That is a phenomenal question, and there is several things that they need to look for. So if you're the owner of a small business, then let's say you don't have an IT department or you don't have an IT person that you rely on. One of the things that you need to understand that is if you were going to have people logging in from home and they're going to be using a VPN, virtual private network, inherently that is secure. So when they click on that VPN, that is an encrypted tunnel from their home PC to your work PC. So that part of it is fine. The problem there is that you don't know who set up the environment at their home. So you don't know if the password was changed on their router, which it should have been. You don't know who set everything up. You don't know if there's a time bomb sitting inside that network just waiting to explode. And if there is, and they log into your network through that VPN and they're infected, your network is now going to become infected as well. That $127,000 I just told you about, that is exactly what happened. And they gave that person a laptop that had all the security credentials and parameters for the business. And it still didn't protect them. And the reason it didn't protect them is because they didn't know who set up the network at home, and that network was already infected. So inherently, it's okay to use a VPN, but you have to know who set that home network up. If you don't know, then I implore you to look into what we call Zero Trust VPN. That'll go and authenticate off of your network, off of your router, out into the cloud, so that even if you are infected, it cannot go back into your network. So that is a very, very good question.
Well, I think, you say a lot of things, and I know that, computing professionals and technical professionals, it's second nature to them, or it's, just very common to them. And one of the things that I really have come to appreciate about what you're doing is, speaking in a language that a lot of people can understand, or at least you're aware that people may not be, it's a foreign language to a lot of people. And so I want to go down to kind of maybe not the lowest common denominator, but start at something that I think a lot of people have questions about or wonder about, but maybe they're afraid to ask or afraid to look stupid about. And that is this cloud, this magical, mystical cloud, because they say everything's in the cloud, So can you kind of define what that cloud is, and especially when you're dealing with a small business, and what some of the security concerns around that? Because a lot of people think, oh, well, the cloud, it's managed by, Amazon or Dropbox or some of those. They've got the security handled. But, that's probably a false sense of security. So can you talk a little bit about that cloud and kind of maybe make it easier for people to wrap their heads around what that's about?
Yeah, that's perfect. So the cloud is vitally important. And in fact, we are pushing most of our clients to the cloud for a very specific reason. So when you think about the cloud, you can think of it like this. So inside of your server room, inside of your office, you have several computers in there, you have servers in there, you have backup boxes, and you have switches and routers and other things that make your local network work internally. So that is an on-premise device. So you can think of that part as the cloud too. We talked a little bit just a minute ago about VPN. So when you use the VPN from your home, you're theoretically using the cloud to get to that device. So in theory, people think that's the cloud. It isn't. It's a connection back to your office. Now, when we say cloud, what we're talking about is a huge facility that was designed to be air-cooled, and it quite literally will take a nuclear bomb to blow this place up. But inside there are cages, and inside those cages, we put your servers, or we build out infrastructure, typically with equipment that we purchase that is much more high-end, so that we can put all of your stuff on there and other people as well, and then have sophisticated backups. So there is a great deal of security there. So nobody's going to ever be able to break in there. And believe me, it's like Fort Knox. They're not going to get in there. I can't get in there without my card. If I don't have my card to get in there, and the person at the front knows me, they're not letting you in. Period. End of story. There's so much in there that they have to protect. The nice thing is they have all the big names coming in there for internet. So that's why the cloud is so fast, and that's why you can access it from anywhere. It is much more secure, in my opinion, as a cybersecurity expert, than keeping it on premises. And it's easier for the people. So when you say cloud, people think of this big, fluffy, imaginary thing. No, it basically means that we're taking your network infrastructure in your office and we're moving it to a facility that has high-end devices that we can put all of your same data on. And the nice thing is you don't have the licensing issues. You don't have all of the different problems that you typically have in a small business when you have to upgrade your computers, because we do all of that stuff automatically for you. And so when you have all of that, you end up saving money in the long run. Yes, there's when you first start out, let's say that you were let's say your company was a between $20 and $50 million company. In order for us to take your stuff and build out a brand new infrastructure for you, it's probably going to be $100,000, and we'll have a whole new setup inside your office for you. In the cloud, we don't have that expense because it's already there. We just need to set you up, and over the course of time, it's basically like renting, so it's like a lease. But you don't have all of the licensing that you had to purchase over here, so you do save money. And it is, in my opinion, like I said, much more secure. Now, that being said, the hackers know this, and so they're trying really, really hard to get into these places. So it just takes one time for the hacker to be right. We have to be right every single time. So cybersecurity becomes the number one job of IT people like me to make sure that your data is protected. I think that should pretty much tell you what the cloud is. It's nothing more than moving your infrastructure from your office into a data center that is designed to keep that environment cool, to make it fast, and to make things happen quickly.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think, when people, 10, 15 years ago, everybody's stuff was in their physical location. If something happened to that, it all shut down. I guess that's one of the benefits of the cloud is that your information stays there regardless of your geography, I guess, or any catastrophes that happen in your geography, correct?
That is correct. So you can use any device now and get to your data. You can use your cell phone, you can use your tablet, you can use a laptop, anything from anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. As long as you have an internet connection, you'll have access to your system. Yeah,
and I guess the trade-off is with those conveniences comes opportunities for hackers. With all those, one of the things that I want to get into is I want to get deeper into kind of painting a picture of what it looks like working with your firm. But before we do, for someone that's really curious now, or they think Jesse's just mentioned something that I haven't thought about. It takes me back to, I believe it was chapter 6 in your book. It was the, what you can do now, with the now being, emphasized to protect your network and business. And you get very granular in there, very thorough for different types of even data from text files and PDFs to images and audio files and video files and different things like that. So, what is something that maybe someone hadn't thought about, something as innocuous as an image file, a picture? What are the threats that may be lying within that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And image files are really easy to hide things behind. So you can embed code in the back of those images that people don't see. And when they go to open it up and let's say they have it as a screensaver, you can have that code embedded in the back of that image, and then you can attack them real easy. So those are the kinds of things that you have to be careful of. Downloading things from peer-to-peer file sharing software, and downloading music and doing those types of things you shouldn't do that in a work environment, because you open yourself up and you open the company up to a lot of different trouble. But what you can do is make sure that the employees understand that. Don't let them stream, music all day long. It chews up the bandwidth, those kind of things. And really, really important is the firewall. Most people think, a firewall is going to protect me, but there's different types of firewalls, Jack. One of the firewalls that cause problems is what we call a traditional firewall. And there's a traditional firewall versus the next generation firewall. A traditional firewall says, hey, we're accepting email, and I'm sending a piece of email to Jack. And then I send that email, and it says, oh, Jack, this is for you. But how does it know that I have embedded in there, in the picture that I just sent you, bad code that's going to infect your system? It doesn't. So it sends it to you. You get the email, and you know that or you think that it's me. And let's say that your antivirus, for whatever reason, wasn't updated. That antivirus was your last line of defense. You click on that, now you've infected the network. A next generation firewall, you send that through, it does what is called a deep packet inspection, and it goes through and inspects everything that's on that system before it ever allows it to go through. And if it sees something that it deems as bad, it is going to not allow it to go through. So that's a big, big difference. And if you don't know whether you have a traditional firewall versus a next generation firewall, I can tell you this: if your firewall says something like some of these old Cisco routers that are home based, they're just a standard traditional firewall, and it's really a good thing to change those out. The other thing that makes this really, really important is to create and enforce what we call an AUP, an acceptable use policy, and what people should be doing, and they should know what those policies are, and that you should have every employee sign those so that they have a clear understanding of what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, I can tell you, again, one of the many things that I really have come to appreciate about what you're doing is you are a true advocate for these small businesses, and the things that you outline in your book is you're educating them, and you're really being a true advocate for their cyber safety. And you even talk about things like creating that acceptable use policy and enforcing that acceptable use policy, and even enforcing people that bring their own devices to work and creating better passwords and all that. So let's dig into a little bit about what your firm does, because a lot of business owners, they're too busy trying to keep their business running, especially in this day and age, just to maintain and keep their business, much less trying to grow it. Does your firm, even though you're off site, right? You're kind of a virtual the service provider, is that something that you do for soup to nuts, from everything from not just that tactical implementation, but also doing that thing for training employees and creating those policies and a way to enforce them for these businesses?
Absolutely. We do all of that. So the very first thing that I ask people when we start to do anything together is, hey, are you in the dark web? And typically you get a blank stare. Do you know what the dark web is? And then if they don't know what the dark web is, we tell them, if you've been in business for an extended period of time, your email address is probably 99.9% sure down in the dark web. it's because it gets sold and gets sold and gets sold and ends up down in the dark web, and people buy those because it's important for them. And if it is, we'll find out, because we'll do a free scan for you to see if your company domain is down in the dark web. We'll scrape the dark web to find out if you have any risk down there. And if you do, this is the reason why passwords are so important to change. Because if you do, I'll be able to tell you, look, this particular company was hit on this day. Now remember, if you are in the dark web, it doesn't necessarily mean that you did anything wrong. I was in the dark web because FitnessPal got hit.
Oh.
And so my PII, my personally identifiable information was down there. And so the very first thing you have to do is find out if you have people that are down there. And we'll bring up everybody that has worked for you. And you might have past CEOs or CFOs that have been with you, and you can tell me, well, they're no longer here. But do you know for sure that what they did while they were there, that you have access to everything that they had before they left? Remember those drop boxes we talked about?
Yeah. Exactly
what happens. And so once we find that out, and then we can move on, and we'll do a complete assessment of your network and tell you where the holes are and what needs to happen for us to move forward. So yeah, we do a complete investigation of the network, make sure that everything is safe and secure, tell you what isn't, tell you what needs to be done at that point. And then once we have that set up and done, then we can move forward with implementing the things that will make you safe. All the while, we'll set you up so that your employees are not, they're going to get little messages, and we're going to do phishing attempts to them, and we're going to send them things, and only one person in the company is going to know this. And what it is they are phishing attempts that look identical to real stuff, like real credit card stuff, real Amazon accounts, all of these things. And we find out who inside your network is actually clicking on these things. And then every time they click something, what ends up happening is a video will come up and say, hey, luckily this is a phishing attempt by your IT team, and these are the things that you need to look for. And it'll tell them exactly what they should have looked for in that email. And so that's how they learn. And it takes just a couple of minutes. The videos are nice, they're short, they're clean, and they explain in layman's terms what you should be looking for. And that's how we train the employees right from the very beginning. Because without a trained employee set, we have an extra thing to worry about. And that's something we don't necessarily need another piece of headache for that. So that's why we do that.
Well, that I've got to tell you, that is, from my point of view, extremely impressive, because I think about one of the, I guess, unfortunate characteristics of human nature is that cures always seem to sell better than prevention, right? And it's almost like you are putting that urgency of what could have happened. You're doing, by just warning people about what could happen never seems to really take hold. But when something really does happen, that's when they pay attention. And by, I guess, emulating that, that's kind of the response you get, because also cures seem to be far more expensive to when you need a cure than when you're in prevention mode. Can you talk a little bit about that on what, how drastic that savings can be if you implement something that allows you to prevent this from happening, rather than waiting for a disaster to happen and having to that expense of curing a catastrophe? Or do you have any case studies or something to illustrate that?
Yeah, I do, and that's awesome that you said that, because we have a law firm that we picked up, and they have, I think, 20 users. And we were actually at another client, and the CFO calls me into his office, and he says, hey, man, can you do me a favor and call my wife? She works at this company, and she thinks they were hit with ransomware. And I said, yeah, sure. And so I call her up, and this was like a couple of days after it happened. So she calls me up, or I call her up and talk to her, and she says, I think we got hit with something. I'm not 100% sure. And but I asked her, do you have an IT team? She says, yes, we do. And I said, well, here's the challenge with that. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, so we have to make it very clear. We can come in and help them and assist them. She says, yeah, I think they really, really need help. And so we go in and talk to them, and we were there to help and assist them. And what I end up finding out is that they didn't have a backup. Their last known good backup was 2 years ago.
Oh, my.
This is a law firm that has been in business for, I think it was 14 or 15 years at the time. All their data was encrypted. All of it. I was able to bring a couple of things back on a couple of desktops, but that wasn't all of the stuff on the network and in their shared files. And so they had absolutely no choice but to pay the ransom. Now, that being said, remember what I just said. They're paying their IT company. They're paying us to help their IT company, and now they have to pay money to get the data back. So they get a key from the people who did the locking. So ransomware, if you don't know what ransomware is, it's when they encrypt all your data and it's no longer intelligible. You can't read it, you can't see it, it's just bad. And when you encrypt something like that, anytime you write software, you have what are called an encrypt and decrypt key. And so they are the only people that have that key. You pay them the ransom, they'll give you the key back. And they usually do. Sometimes they don't, but they usually do. Well, they did have to pay for that. Plus they were paying for us. Plus they were paying their current IT team. We get the ransom key back. Their IT team was having a heck of a time, couldn't make it work. So they called us back in. We come in there, and we were able to get that key working and get that back. But it took 14 days to get the data back. This is a high-profile law firm that does real estate law. So you can imagine how frustrated they were. In that whole scenario, after we stepped away, they ended up calling us and asking us to do their IT and getting rid of the other team. It's just kind of how that game is played, and we ended up, and they're our customer today. In fact, we are literally, as we make this call, moving their data to the cloud so that their stuff is up in the cloud and they can get to it from anywhere. And that's all because of the COVID stuff that just happened. But now, let me tell you about another scenario where another customer of ours has been with us for a long time. They get hit, and we don't worry about it because the second they get hit, they knew what to do because they had all of those things in place. We have documentation for everything that should happen if they get hit. They followed those rules. They called us up. We shut everything down. We put them on, we have a backup box in their office that is a direct image of their server that got hit. We shut the server down, put the backup box in, and they were up in less than an hour. And it was like nothing happened. That's the difference. Yeah,
I think that perfectly illustrates the difference between prevention and cures. Yeah, 14 days, just 14 days to figure out the encryption, not to mention figure out that your stuff has been hijacked.
Right.
To an hour of being back and running. I can imagine there's probably a lot of businesses out there that, I guess just because you're not experiencing problems right now doesn't mean there's not gremlins running around in your.
That's absolutely true.
In your infrastructure. Is that something that you can do that it kind of as a preemptive, what is that step one if someone is thinking about engaging you or step one when they engage you to just get that snapshot?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and you're absolutely right. The vast majority of people have no idea if there's something lurking on their network. And so when we do that scan, once we come in and we talk to you initially and we do that scan of your network, that's one of the things we're looking for, because that will tell us where the holes are. That'll tell us what kind of things are on your network, and then we can tell you and give you a remedy to take those things and get rid of them.
Well, having something like this happen is a frightening enough prospect, but it seems that there's probably a lot of business out there that, for whatever reason, a lot of it has to do with myths and misconceptions, that they're afraid of engaging someone like you to come in and look. And I think a lot of it may be the same reason people, I don't want to go to the doctor. They may tell me something I don't want to hear. The people like to stick their head in the sands. What do you see as being the common fears that people have about engaging a firm like yours or having someone from the outside come in to do this kind of assessment to see, exactly what kind of shape their their infrastructure's in?
Well, that's a great question. It's like looking at a checkbook and knowing that you're not really doing things the right way, and you don't want to go balance your books because you know you're close, but you don't know how close, and you just don't want to see the answer. And typically that's what it is. People are afraid also when, they get somebody like me in there that we're going to talk over your head and we're going to tell you things that you may not understand. And unfortunately, there's truth to that because the IT world is not regulated. It's not like the airline industry. It's not like real estate. Those are very regulated industries. Our industry isn't. So anybody can go out there and put a sign up and say, hey, I fix computers and we can take care of your network. As long as they can convince you of that, then that's what will happen, and it is what it is at that point. But you should never ever let somebody talk to you in a way that you don't understand. And I try very, very hard. I've been told multiple times that, Jesse, you're not a typical nerd, whatever that means. I think it's a backhanded compliment. But I try very, very hard to make sure that what I'm saying is understandable and in the most layman terms that I can possibly use to try to convey the message. It isn't scary. It doesn't have to be scary. But we make it scary because we don't understand it. And anything you don't understand is either stupid or, it's dumb. We don't need that. I do that myself. If I don't when it comes to accounting, I don't like accounting. So, that's dumb. No, it isn't dumb. It's just you don't understand it. And so let me help you understand it, because if I give you a better understanding, it's only going to make you and your company stronger and allow you to move forward. Remember, your company doesn't just protect your data. You're protecting the data of your clients. And if that isn't important to you, then we can't help.
Yeah, well, I think, that's probably the base prerequisite is that concern. And I think, what you just said probably resonates with a lot of people and maybe alleviate a lot of anxiety, because I think, it's so common. And that's even if when you go to auto mechanic, you have someone come to look at your AC. I can just imagine that there's probably, technical firms out there that start spatting off, well, you got something wrong with your shackle bolt stabilizer and your modulatic phyllepters are out of tune, and and you don't know what's going on.
Right.
And so I think, just the fact that you do take the time to let people understand and put it into an understandable language is so important and so appreciated, I'm sure, by your clients. So when people, if someone comes in or invites you in to take a look at their systems, do they have options on what the next step would be, depending on, what their situation is, what their budget is, whether they have internal? Because I know there's probably a lot of, especially on the smaller businesses, that have the teenager next door that's set up their computer systems and has probably grown beyond that, but just hasn't changed that. What are some of the options that someone would have to work with you?
Yeah, there's a lot of options there. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out where you are. Once we figure out where you are, we can give you a much better understanding of what we need to do to take you to a place that is going to make you not only look professional, because you'll have all of the documentation. So earlier you had asked about, how we go and help people. When we start training the employees, like I talked about earlier, you'll also get a whole bunch of documents that are templated that we've created, so that you can put all of those things in place, so that you can put the UAP in place, so that you can see what the cybersecurity risks are for your home users. You can see what all of that stuff is going to look like. Bringing your own device, having a policy for that, knowing what the password policies are, knowing what kind of password manager you should have on your cell phone. I saw just earlier today, somebody asked a question about what is the most important program on your cell phone. And for me, the very first thing I said was my password manager, because you have to have something like that to make sure that you're not keeping the same passwords all over the place. And then, what do you do with the old data? How do you get rid of old data? That kind of stuff is important as well. So those things for us are very, very important. We want to make that simple for people so that they have a complete understanding of the cybersecurity side of their business, and they can rest assured, because I'm telling you, when the CEO and the CFO and the principals of that business get to go on vacation and not take their phone with them, and they get to spend that time with their family because we've got it covered for them, that is a great feeling for them, and it's a great feeling for us.
Well, that's beyond measure, right? And I think, just being able to do that is probably a bargain at any price for a lot of people. So what would be the steps for someone to find out more about Jesse Castro and Freedom Managed Services, and to learn more and find out how they can get involved? Because I think what you've demonstrated today is, certainly the cost of prevention is far, far more affordable than the cost of curing a problem. And I think anyone that listens to this would understand how powerful it was to have someone with your strengths, keeping an eye on this stuff. So how would someone go about doing that?
Yeah, so they can go to my website. It's www.fmsit.net, stands for Freedom Managed Service IT.net, and take a look at our website. We are making some changes to the website, so it might be a little bit messy, but you can take a look at the website and see there. Our numbers are pasted all over there. Just give me a call. You can call me direct at the office here. It's on the website as well. We have an 800 number there as well. And I would love to talk to anybody that has any kind of concerns or questions. And
the upcoming book, your upcoming book, Cybersecurity Secrets. How can people find out more about that? It'll be available on Amazon coming April 2021. Is that correct?
Yep, April 2021. It'll be on Amazon and a couple other places. I'm not sure what the others are at this point. But they can go to my website as well. I think we're going to be giving like 200 copies away. They can go to the website, fmsit.net/cybersecurity-book. And I'll have that posted within the next couple of days.
Well, Jesse, I've got to thank you for coming on today and being so giving with your time and your knowledge. You are a true influencer in my book and an advocate for small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, that I think is much needed. And this is a topic that I think gets, far overlooked, is people just think that, like you said at the top of the show, they think it can't happen to them, that they're not big enough. But in reality, it seems to make them most attractive for a lot of these hackers. So thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Jack.
All right, folks, there you have it. Definitely check out Jesse Castro and Freedom Managed Services. Again, that's fmsit.net. We'll also have the links to the site, and also links about how you can find out more about Jesse's upcoming book, Cybersecurity Secrets. I strongly suggest, at the very least, you take a look at that, because it will certainly give you some things to think about, and things that you probably have not considered. And to me, it's an absolute must for any small or medium-sized business. So until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today.